I have worked elections since 1970, when I was 4 at the time.
Or maybe 5.
It was the first year that the University of Texas students in Austin were allowed to vote in Austin elections. And it was an extremely hotly contested, very different city council election. In Texas, you have to be registered 30 days before the election. And part of that is you really are here, and part of it is paperwork to be sure that, because your card is mailed to your home, and voter registration cards cannot be forwarded because they are going to where you say you live. I'm like the geography teacher who was desperate for a job and told the superintendent, I'll teach it round or flat. I can kind of argue both ways about same-day registration. I worked at the Kibbe Dome last November. I registered a lot of people. Almost every single person who registered that day had adequate 2 forms of identification. I had to turn one student away, and I did not want to do it. He had absolutely nothing to back up where he lived. My contention is, if you're going to vote, I'm like your mom. I want you to think about it more than the morning of the election. I want you to want to vote. I worked in an election one time where a man who voted every single time, school board, county, everything, he always voted. We had a huge sign out in front of the county annex, and it said, vote here today. And he came in and he said, well, what are we voting on today? And I thought, you know, we got another week until voting's over. I wanted to tell him, go home and read the paper. But I didn't. You know, I just told him what it was. He came and signed his name, and he went and voted.
To me, that's a whole nother conversation, which I'd be happy to have for you. Do we really get to say that voters need to be informed? I mean, we would like that. I mean, I'm an educator, I would like people, you know, to read the voter pamphlet and come to a League of Women Voters Forum and all, but do we really get to make a judgment about who's informed and who's not?
That's why
I think that's a slippery slope. And are you better informed or more thoughtful 30 days before than the day of? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not so sure. The person who registered 30 days before may not have given a single darn thought to the election. And the person who came that day may have been considering all of these issues or people for quite some time. And, you know, we don't know that.
Well,
we don't get to.
We don't get to. A lot of people who voted last November didn't.
Well, that's we don't get to say only smart people get to vote. One of the things they did in the South was you had to meet a certain moral standard in order to vote. I don't even have a comment about that, but it just starts as, you know, we know, I'll be candid, we know that college-educated people were less likely to vote for Donald Trump than people with high school education. So are we going to say only people went to college get to vote, and we aren't going to let people who only we don't get to go there in my way. So I understand what you're saying. It is a responsibility that people should take seriously. But rights and responsibilities are kind of...
It's like wanting people to read to their children, but you can't make them read to their children.
Yeah, basically, well, yes.
I read that of the 23,000 votes in Wisconsin that were not counted, 17,000 were folks who were able to provide a form of identification that wasn't then acceptable because it wasn't on the state's list of acceptable IDs. And so is that anything you've researched?
I haven't really researched it, but, you know, like some states allow baptismal records is one example. Other states, not so much for that. So that's the kind of, you know, thing we're talking about, what happens to be on your list. And frankly, it's a lot easier for somebody like me, a white, middle-class, middle-aged woman to have the right kind of document. Like I said, I have a birth certificate. I have a driver's license. I've got pieces of paper that show who I am, and it's pretty easy for me to find them. My mother can't drive anymore, so she doesn't have a driver's license. I'm sure she has a birth certificate somewhere, but when we moved her, I don't exactly know where. So for other people, even what we would call sort of standard forms of identification may not be that easy to have. And if you're a minority person in an urban area where people don't own a car because you can't afford to drive it or park it, you probably don't, I mean, a driver's license is what, people in Idaho, we get those when we're 15 years old, and it's, you can't exist in Idaho hardly but that's not the case where the majority of people live. So so you're right, finding the right kinds of things to have to prove for a significant amount of the population may not be that easy. So it seems to me you want to make the list as expansive as you can rather than narrower. And I think this commission is making the list of, would like to make the list of proof documents narrower.
So I would just add that this commission is really new to this game, and legislatures throughout the country have been working on this problem for the last, they've been working on this issue for the last 15 or 20 years. I mean, Idaho's voter registration law, or voter ID law, where we need the driver's licenses from the mid-2000s. The closed primary in Idaho is from 4 years ago, I think. There's an association of Republican legislators that has bills ready for legislation and is pushing them actively through, I think this commission is late to the game.
Right, but it's late to the game, but the issue, as you said, is
Big issue.
a long time issue. And I would say, eventually, much as in my age group this is, eventually we'll do this all electronically. There'll be some way, I mean, it has to get to that point eventually for money and for all kinds of reasons. But gee, that makes us all really nervous about doing it that way. And people like me, I want to go there, I want to punch those little things, I want to see that ballot put in that box, all those. But eventually, we're going to all have to have some kind of code that's only for one person, and that's what we're going to have to do to solve this, and that's going to be a tough one. Yeah.
I'd just say that we will be having training on electronic voter registration this year in Idaho. That'll happen late November. And so we're interested to see how that's going to go. And you don't have to have your driver's license. You can sign a form that you swear you are who you are if your name is in the book. If your name is not in the poll book, then you do have to show your ID. They took away the 30-day prior. And so you have to show your ID, and you can put two IDs together. You can put a picture ID with a address, like you say, your utility bill. Just like that.
What do you know about automatic registration? I've heard there's some discussion
Well,
about
there is
that.
some discussion, and it's sort of analogous, those of you who've been following the University of Idaho or the state of Idaho, where everybody that graduates from high school, we're gonna admit them all to college automatically. In a lot of ways, that solves some of the, you turn 18, you get automatically registered to vote. We probably have the ability to do that now, or certainly a way to figure that out. Maybe that makes as much sense as anything. And it's different. I mean, part of the issue is the difference between a local election and how, who registers and votes in that, and a national election where you have different kinds of issues, even though the rules are the same. Those are kind of there are two different groups of questions at hand about those. But it seems to me like, why not? A person is automatically a citizen if they're born here. We don't do anything else. They just have to be born. When you turn 18, you're eligible for all kinds of things. Why not just let them be registered then? I think it'd save a lot of time and effort and money and be fair.
Yeah,
That's
So
just,
I'm wondering what kind of power this commission has, and I guess the question is, what would have to happen after they make whatever decisions they're gonna make in order to implement what they want implemented?
well, a commission actually has little power, other than sort of moral suasion power. But in my opinion, it is the hopes that its findings, then the Trump administration could use as the basis for some arguments to make some changes in laws that would be beneficial.
So there's,
So it's just,
Yeah.
it's report, like take for example, we just are talking about President Kennedy's assassination and the commission that investigated, it doesn't have power, it just does work and makes suggestions, and that's what this commission would do.
So I hate to break it up. I don't know if Dr. Aiken will be around for comments afterwards, but sadly, it's time for us to, some of us to go back to work. And